Hello everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. I'm Mark and this is the post-game show of the Rugby International between the Japanese Brave Blossoms and the New Zealand All Blacks that was played in Yokohama today. G'day everyone and welcome to today's show, and let's get into talking about the Japanese game against the All Blacks just finished in Yokohama. And it was a pretty interesting game, and a couple of things that I wanted to share that I was looking forward to watching throughout this game. And of course Scott Robertson had picked a number of fringe players for the All Blacks and I was very interested to see how they went. So in this video I'm going to talk about their performances. How did the All Blacks go overall? Were Japan in this game at all? And what were some of the highlights for me? Well, as we got underway, the thing that I was really looking out for was the All Blacks' dominance per se in the scrummaging. They had over 60 kilos advantage in the scrums, and it was expected by myself that the All Blacks were going to dominate the scrums in this particular game, therefore set up a lot of possession that they were going to be able to score many points. Well, the first thing that happened was Japan started off really well in this game, and they started putting the All Blacks under a lot of pressure. And I have to say, they ran the All Blacks rugged for the first 10 minutes or so. The All Black defence looked completely in disarray, and Japan were able to make some very striking runs through the New Zealand inside backs in particular, which opened up the field for them. They were using their big forwards, Japan, to make great busts through the middle, and then giving offloads to their smaller and faster men out wide. This was having a big impact. So to the surprise of many, Japan went over for the first try. Naikambula got a fantastic try, went through the middle of the All Blacks, and before we knew it, Japan were up to 7 points to 0. Now the thing for this game for me was, how long was it going to take the All Blacks to settle? Japan were always going to have their moments in this game, and Eddie Jones was probably hoping that Japan were going to be able to keep New Zealand at bay for some time and to disrupt their rhythm in terms of getting combinations going in this game. Of course, there was a lot of new players in this All Black team, and one of the things Scott Robertson would want to be seeing from these players was their ability to be able to combine. We had Anton Leonard-Brown at number 12 and we had Billy Proctor at 13. That was one of the combinations we were looking out for. And the early stages of this game, they weren't really in the game, and it was all Japan that had the running. Now we all know that Japan's going to play a very open and expansive game, trying to beat the defensive line with their pace and their skill sets, but that comes at a price. And whenever you play like that and it's helter-skelter rugby, you've got to watch out that you're saving some energy for your defensive patterns. And that's exactly what we started to see in terms of problems for Japan when New Zealand started to put several phases together. We saw 2 or 3 Japanese tacklers going in to trying to catch the All Blacks and to put them down on the ground, but the problem was that then left gaps out wide, and the All Blacks started to exploit this. So while it might sound like a great strategy on paper to try and run the opposition off the field, you've got to make sure you save the energy for the defensive line and you're able to get your structures right. And that's when things started to go wrong for Japan in this game. As soon as the All Blacks started to work that out and they started to put their patterns together on the offensive game, they started to run in some tries. And by the time we had got to half time, the All Blacks had put 7 tries into Japan. Now there was no doubt about it that throughout that first half, Japan had a number of opportunities where they made the All Black defence look pretty average, to say the least, but they just weren't able to quite finish off some of those moves. But Japan did score 2 tries in that first half. Johnny Naikambula got the first one, and Marquesi, the number 8, got the second one, which was also a very impressive move from the Japanese players. And it was after some very good build-up that made the All Black defence look a little bit average. But going into half-time, it was an enormous lead by the All Blacks. They started running in some razzle-dazzle tries towards the end of the first half, scoring 43 points to 12 in that first half, and one would have the impression that it was going to be a runaway train for the All Blacks in the second half. If I look at some of the players that I felt stood out for the All Blacks in that first half, I thought Patrick Tuipulotu was having a fantastic game. It was great to see him back in the All Black jersey. He was the captain in this particular game. And I tell you what, some of his ball play was outstanding. He got in there and got a couple of great steals for the All Blacks in that first half. When he was used in the line out, he was secure. And also from the exit plays for the New Zealand All Blacks in terms of returning the kicks, he was up there catching the ball early as well. So I thought Patrick Tuipulotu was one of the outstanding players for the All Blacks in the first half. Since being selected for this All Black team, Wallace Satiti has been an outstanding player, and he continued that form in the first half against Japan today. He was outstanding in breaks. He's getting some very good line-out ball for the All Blacks at different occasions as well, and his play continues to go on an upward trajectory. One of the other players I was watching closely in that first half was Cam Roigard, who was starting again at number 9 for the All Blacks. And I have to say, he was a bit rusty by the look of it. He got caught out with his box kick on a couple of occasions being too slow, and he put one kick out on touch on the full, which wasn't too good. But I put this down to Roigard simply needing a little bit more time in the number 9 black jersey to get back into the rhythm of games at this level. And I think he will come good. But based on what I saw in that first half, Cortez Ratama is definitely playing the better rugby at this point in time. And it's going to be an interesting selection process for Scott Robertson as we head into the England game next weekend at Twickenham. Is he going to start Cortez Ratama, or are we going to see Cam Roigard in the number 9 jersey? One of the question marks for me that's come out of this particular game. Sam Cane also scored a try. He wasn't that prominent across the field, but Sam Cane often does a lot of work that you don't see, and he had a pretty good first half as far as I was concerned. Now, looking at some of those backs, I didn't see much of Anton Leonard-Brown in that first half. Billy Proctor did score a try, but I also saw him do a couple of things that were a little bit unconventional and didn't put the All Blacks on the front foot. He also missed a tackle or two in that first half. So not a fantastic performance from Billy Proctor in giving his opportunity after last playing for the All Blacks against Fiji in San Diego earlier in their campaign this year. Now, Samapini Finau, Tossi and Tamaiti Williams also scored tries in that first half for the All Blacks, and it was after good work from rolling mauls and lineouts that those players were able to go over using their size close to the line, and I thought they did some really good things. Asafa Umur, although despite having a bad line-out throw at the beginning of the game, he came good in general play, and he did some really good breaks for the All Blacks that put pressure on Japan, and he was able to recycle the ball for the attacking play of the All Blacks. So I thought as the game went on, Umur got better and better for the All Blacks, particularly in general play. Mark Talia and Sevu Reece were doing those darting runs that they do on the wings. At times they were looking dangerous, but for me there's a lot of lateral running going on, and I like to see Caleb Clark and Will Jordan on the wings for the All Blacks. They go direct, they go around their players, they look much more effective when it comes to impacting the breaking down of the defence. But Talia and Reece have this kind of snaking run options all the time that lead them back into the forwards, and it doesn't really create good ball usage for the All Blacks in my opinion. And that's why I like Clark and Jordan on the wings, because they can actually bring their speed in, run around players, run through players in a more direct fashion, and it sets up the next phase of play if they don't score a try with those attacking raids. So again, we saw a lot of the snaking run from Sevu Reece and Mark Talia in the first half of this game. Talia did score a good try, I'll give him that much. But again, this is just something I think against stronger defences the All Blacks will have trouble with, and we've already seen it in this campaign so far this year when Mark Talia and Sevu Reece have come up against stronger opponents. So at half time, I would have thought that Scott Robertson would have been a little bit disappointed with the scrummaging from the All Blacks. They were not dominant. Japan were holding their own and also getting some good ball, quick ball from their own scrums. And what it was perceived to be a strength for the All Blacks in this particular game was nullified up until half time, absolutely. Now, one factor you may not know was Owen Franks was the Japan scrum coach for this game, and I'm sure the ex-All Black would have given the Japanese a lot of inside knowledge on how to deal with this All Black front row. But they had to do it, and they did a really good job, and I was impressed with the way that Japan scrummed in the first half of this game. They really nullified the potential advantage that the All Blacks were going to have, and I think this caught the All Blacks out a little bit, because I thought that they believed they were going to have tons of ball from the Japanese from the set piece, and it didn't turn out to be that way in the first half. We saw some really good play from Japan in that first half. Naikambulu scored that good try. Of course, Takikawa was playing pretty well at 10. But Fujiawa at halfback was doing some really good stuff, and then he'd do a couple of silly things that gave the ball away to the All Blacks. There was one kick in particular he did when Japan were deep on attack with a chance to score a try. He should have put the ball through hand, but he did a stupid little kick that went nowhere. The All Blacks were able to recover and clear it on that occasion, and that was just one of those execution problems that Japan could have done without. They could have put more pressure on the All Blacks at that particular point on the game. But Fujiawa did play well. He came right in the second half of the game, and I was pretty impressed with the little halfback for Japan. So Japan did play really well in the first 20 minutes of this game, and I think one of the challenges that Eddie Jones has with this Japanese team is how to keep that balance between attack and defense going for 80 minutes in the game. It's all very well to look spectacular for the first 20 minutes, but then if you run out of gas and the opposition are able to start picking holes in you, then that's not going to be a very successful game plan in the end. And that's exactly what happened at the back end of the first half in this game against Japan. The All Blacks were able to put multiple phases together. They were getting Japan tired. Japan were committing 2 or 3 or even 4 players in some instances to tackles, and that was creating opportunities for the All Blacks out wide. And if you look at the All Blacks scores, a lot of them were scored out very wide, and it gave Damian McKenzie a difficult time when it came to conversions. So 43 points to 12 at half time in favour of the All Blacks. Many thought, I in particular thought, they were going to be able to kick on in the second half and put another 40 points on this Japanese team. But the second half started off very well for Japan. The first period of play in the second half, they put 12 phases together and really showed some dominance in trying to get towards the All Black line. The only problem was they were going laterally across the field and not penetrating through the New Zealand defence. So that was an interesting start to the second half. The All Blacks looked like they'd tighten up their defensive work a little bit more. Now Cam Roigard went over in the 43rd minute for the All Blacks. So after Japan had had that great opening to the second half, the All Blacks took the momentum away. Roigard scored a really good try. He went over in a couple of tackles. It was a difficult job for him to finish that one off, but he did a very good job in doing it. And the All Blacks blew the lead out to 50 points. So that was interesting because now the All Blacks had that momentum to go on with it. But despite scoring that early try in the second half, the All Blacks weren't able to go on with it. And this is what became quite frustrating, I'm sure, for Scott Robertson and the coaching crew in the All Blacks box up watching this game. The All Blacks started to fumble things a little bit. Their combinations weren't right. Japan started to get more ball and started running at the All Blacks. And it just seemed every time the All Blacks had an opportunity, there was either a drop pass, a wrong decision being taken. A lot of you give me a hard time about my thoughts around Damian McKenzie, but we saw it once again in this particular game. Despite the All Blacks having a very healthy lead, his game management falls away sometimes, and we see him making the wrong decisions. He tries for the really big fancy pass when he doesn't need to, or he goes for a 50-50 kick when he doesn't have to, and he should keep the ball in hand and keep the ball into the back line where they have more opportunities to score points. But in this particular game, we saw it again from Damian McKenzie. He'd make a fantastic break, and then he'd throw a fairly poor pass that didn't allow the All Blacks to keep their momentum going. Or on another occasion, he made a really good break, and then he put in a speculative kick that went dead in goal. And it was another opportunity for the All Blacks to keep the ball in hand. So when I'm critiquing Damian McKenzie, these are the sorts of things I'm seeing on the field. And again, against world-class opposition like the All Blacks are going to face in England, Ireland and France, these decisions are going to be very costly, in my opinion, against those top teams. Now, on the flip side, McKenzie did some great things in this game. He was brilliant in defence on a couple of occasions, definitely saving 2 tries for the All Blacks. And it makes me wonder and go back to my point about McKenzie being good for the All Blacks off the bench. And that's where they should be using him, because he has that power to be able to save tries and run down players, as we saw in this particular game, and have an impact when he comes on in that last 20 minutes on the game. But as far as a starting 10 goes for the All Blacks, I've still got a huge question mark over McKenzie. I don't think he's the right guy. and it's based mainly on his decision-making process and his ability to make the right decision at the right time. So despite the All Blacks leading very comfortably by half-time in this game, I still look closely at Mackenzie's performance, because the All Blacks weren't under pressure on the scoreboard, and there was no need to be able to push some of those fancy passes or do those kicks when he had ball in hand and had an opportunity to pass the backs outside of him. And I don't think Anton Leonard-Brown and Billy Proctor got the ball in the right options at different times for them to be able to break through this Japanese line. So again, I'm looking at the smaller details of this All Black team, regardless of what the scoreboard says, and looking at how they can improve their game, because again, up against the top teams in the world, these are the small margins that are going to make the difference. So after Roygaard's early try in the second half, we had to wait till the 68th minute of this game before we got another score, and this time it was Japan. And Helu broke through the New Zealand defence, which was basically non-existent from about 25 metres out, and he went right under the post, scoring a fantastic try, and he put on a fantastic sidestep to get around Damien McKenzie as well. And I'm pretty sure McKenzie thought, with this big forward coming barreling towards him, he was going to try to go over the top of McKenzie, but he put on a great right foot and got around McKenzie and scored a try that he'll be talking about for a long time against the All Blacks. So again, Japan took the initiative in this game when they had the All Blacks on the ropes a little bit during that phase of play, and they were able to score another good try. And I must say, throughout this game, when Japan did score tries, they looked absolutely fantastic. They scored some wonderful tries in this game. They just fell away defensively in this game. They ran out of energy and gas, and they weren't able to compete with the All Blacks over 80 minutes. So one of the other things I was looking at closely in this game was when Scott Robertson went to the bench, and it was in the 50th minute that he decided to bring on the front row of Bell, Tuanga Fussy and Fletcher Newell. He also brought on Josh Lord, and a little bit later on we saw Peter Lakai coming on for the All Blacks. We saw Ruben Love come on later in the game. He had about 20 minutes to impress, and in the last 5 minutes of the game, Ruben Love was able to score 2 speculative tries for the All Blacks on debut. So that was a fantastic moment for Ruben Love. The Japanese, I must say, gave up those tries relatively easy, as they were absolutely gassed at the end of this game. But I tell you what, I think the second half performance of the All Blacks was fairly poor across the board until that last 5 minutes. The scoreboard wasn't going anywhere. They didn't gain the momentum after that Roygaard try early in the second half, and it was pretty disappointing to see a lot of the fumbling errors that were coming from the All Blacks play throughout that second half. Now, another area of the game that we've been keeping a close eye on this year from the All Blacks has been their integration of the bench and the impact of the bench. And once again in this game, it wasn't very good in my opinion. What Scott Robertson would have been looking for was a seamless integration where the structures and the combinations continued on, and the All Blacks were able to score points when the bench came on. That didn't happen though, and we saw a lot of handling errors, we saw a lot of communication errors as well. And this was coming from a lack of coordination from that bench. So they didn't have the kind of impact that we were looking for. And I think this is another question mark over this particular All Black team at the moment. One of the other players I was looking forward to watching was David Havili. I don't know why this guy's in the team. And in the last couple of minutes of the game, when he did get the ball with an opportunity, kicked the ball out on the full from a crossfield kick. I don't know who he was kicking to, maybe the touch judge or the water boy who was standing off the end of the field, but that probably summed it up for me as far as David Havili's inclusion in this All Black team. So I don't think that went very well. So despite a score of 64 points to 19 in the end for the All Blacks against this Japanese team, there were a couple of things that didn't look good from the All Blacks point of view. Did some of these fringe players put their hand up and to show some brilliance? Well, Peter Lakai didn't do too much when he came on the field. He was solid, but I thought we saw some good performances from Tossie. In particular, I thought played very well in the front row today, as did Tamaiti Williams. And those guys have really put their hand up. So I think Scott Robertson has an interesting one to go with as far as the front row goes. But I think he's going to go back to the old school to start the game against England. Patrick Tuipulotu did very well in the game for the All Blacks. I thought he was good around his leadership skills as well. You could see him communicating loudly to the team. And you can't put the errors that the All Blacks created in the back line down to his leadership. It was coming through poor combinations and choices at different times when the Japanese were putting a little bit of pressure on the All Blacks, but also the All Blacks made a lot of errors just when they had the ball in hand and they weren't looking for the right options at that particular time. I thought Billy Proctor had a 50-50 game. There was nothing super outstanding. He did score a try, but at the same time I saw him do a couple of silly things. He gave away a penalty to Japan by taking a player out, and he was also instrumental in another couple of drop passes that happened during impressive moves from the All Blacks. I've made mention in my previous videos that I'm not a huge fan of Anton Lienert-Brown, and he did nothing in this game at all to change my mind around that. In fact, I thought the 12-13 combination was pretty mild in terms of its impact in this particular game, and if it wasn't for the energy of Sevu Reece and Mark Talia out wide, I thought the All Blacks were lacking some penetration. And it just shows what Caleb Clark and Will Jordan bring to this All Black team in terms of being able to get them through defensive lines. They're very, very important players for this All Black team. I thought also we missed the creativity of Beauden Barrett and also his experience in this particular game. I think he's someone that could have opened things up for the All Blacks. And talking about the 15 jersey, Stephen Perifetta was in there today, another one that I was interested in seeing. But I give him a half pass mark on this game. He did some good things. He got the ball out wide sometimes, but he didn't make any instrumental breaks that really created a difference in this game that the All Blacks were looking for. And on a couple of occasions in the defensive line, Damien McKenzie was the one that saved the day, not Stephen Perifetta at fullback. I thought Finau had a good game. He did a couple of really big hits on the Japanese counterparts and basically nearly took them out of the game legally. And he showed his brute size and force today, and he did a couple of good things in open play when he was out standing wide. So I don't think he did his chances any harm at all today, Finau. I thought he had a really good game. I thought Sam Dowry was pretty good in general play, and as far as the structure and set piece goes, he was okay as well. He didn't play as well as Patrick Tuipulotu did, and I thought he had a good game without being too outstandingly brilliant. But again, I thought that this was a fairly disconnected All Black performance at times, particularly in the second half. Despite the 7 tries in the first half, a lot of that could be put down to the Japanese defence falling off. They ran out of gas in the back end of that first half, and it created the opportunities for the All Blacks to play a little bit of razzle-dazzle, get the ball out wide, and there seemed to be a try on offer every time that they did that. Now, from a Japanese point of view, I think they did pretty well in this game. I think it's given something more for Eddie Jones to work on. Japan need to keep their structures in place in defence for an 80-minute period of a game. If they're able to do that, they will be a very difficult side to beat because they can run in tries from anywhere. But unfortunately, that attacking prowess that they show throughout these games is nullified by their lack of defensive work throughout the games over the course of an 80-minute, and that's something that Eddie Jones is going to need to plug if this Japanese team is going to have any chance against the top teams in World Rugby. But I love the fact that this game was played. It gave Japan an opportunity to see where they're at against the top teams in World Rugby. It showed very clearly the things that they need to go away and work on. They've got some very good players indeed. Nakimbulu on the wing was very, very good. Riley at centre was very dangerous when he got the ball. Dern played very well in the forwards as well, and they've got a lot of other players that gave a lot of intensity throughout this game and showed a lot of skill sets as well. So I think if their defensive patterns can be brought together and they're able to hold on to those defensive structures for 80 minutes, this Japan team can really cause some problems to many teams. So now the All Blacks will go on to England and play England at Twickenham next weekend. What did this game give us in terms of learnings? Well, not a lot, and it probably gave us more question marks in terms of some of the performances. Cam Roigard not quite ready yet as far as his total integration into this team, so it'll be interesting to see whether Ratama gets to start next week against England. TJ Perenara came on for the last 20 minutes of the game and did okay, got the ball out, but then he also dropped the ball with the line wide open on attack for the All Blacks, and I think TJ Perenara is going to be the third choice halfback on this tour for the All Blacks. But for me, the problems still lie around number 10, 12 and 13 for the All Blacks. I didn't see enough in this game at all to give me any confidence that they can take on England and be comprehensive in that midfield, and that's going to be an area I think where England are going to target the All Blacks. So watch out for the selections in that area next week. We're probably going to see Rieko Ioane coming back into the All Blacks in the number 13 jersey. Out wide for me, it's got to be Caleb Clark and Will Jordan, because they are the wingers that are able to penetrate defensive lines. This lateral running from Mark Talia and Sevu Reece doesn't do it for me. Satiti had another stormer of a game, this time at number 8. He can play anywhere in the back row as far as I'm concerned. So we'll probably have to go with what Scott Robertson gives us next week, as we're probably going to see Ardie Savea back in the 8 jersey next week. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Sam Cane gets put there, or we're going to see a change in that position for the England game. Let me know in the comments what you think about that one. There you go, that's how I saw it today in Yokohama between Japan and the New Zealand All Blacks. 64 points to 19 in favour of the All Blacks. It was a big score, but there was a lot of things that the All Blacks need to work on before they get to Twickenham next weekend if they're going to have a chance of rolling over the England team. I think England will look at this game and see a lot of opportunities on how they can take it to the All Blacks. But of course, we're going to see a different All Black selected team next weekend in England. There's no doubt about it. Now it's your turn, so get stuck in the comments. Let me know what you thought about this game. Let me know who you thought stood out, good and bad, from each side. Love to hear your opinions, and I read all the comments, so make sure you keep those going. Now I'm going to be back with plenty of content as we go through the weekend, and also heading into next week. We've got the first of the Northern Tour games starting next weekend, so it's getting very exciting as far as the Autumn International Series goes. You're going to be able to follow it all here on Inside Rugby with Mark. So if you're enjoying my content, why not hit the subscribe button, find other ways in which you can support me here on my channel as I try and play a small role in growing the great game of rugby across the world during my retirement here in Cancun in Mexico. Now I'll see you all again very soon in the next video. Until then, stay safe, stay well everyone, and have a fantastic weekend enjoying your rugby. Until next time, it's bye for now.